Pete Crow-Armstrong is having a very tough second half. We got him and other names that we're going to have to really make some tough decisions on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we are your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Matthew Ane. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the bell below to subscribe to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Also, please, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're getting that audio source, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps out the show. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use the promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. Only valid through September 30th. Order transfusion flavors, 5-Hour Energy shots today. Okay, let's get into it. Look, I got 10 names that are either struggling in the second half that, we maybe have to have some concerns about, or guys that I need to reassure you on what their future outcome looks like. Right. And I think that this is a perfect time to do this, right? We're looking at, playoffs in a couple weeks. We're looking at, okay, how do I solidify my teams? A lot of the trade deadlines are coming to an end. So we need to just start honing in and trying to cut the fat and also see who we need to be patient with. And there's a lot of names that come to mind. And like I opened up at the top of the show, Pete Crow-Armstrong, the outfielder for the Chicago Cubs, is having a real rough month. Like, quite honestly. 83 at bats, 7 runs, 2 bombs, 7 ribs, 3 stolen bases, batting .205 after having one of the hottest starts I've seen in a very long time, especially to a young MLB career. The dude was amazing, probably like the second or third best player in baseball for the whole first half. He's just been a monster. And to see him kind of drop off definitely gets people on like the bubble of tilt. And okay, what do I do? Is he falling off? Are we going to start having these Eric Thame vibes or others like him that, have really great first halves and then kind of fall off a cliff? And that's kind of what we're here to evaluate. So let's look at the underlying stats and let's see if we can kind of assure things, right? His xWOB is actually at a 338. His expected batting average 254, right on par with what he's doing. His expected slug is 507, and he's crushing it right now. His slug is 518, so that's on par. The average velo, average exit velocity is sitting at 89.7 miles an hour, so that's great. He's battling still 13.6% of the time, creating hard contact 41.7% of the time. Launch angle's pretty decent and everything. Yeah, he's striking out and walking a little bit more, but I'm not really scared off by what he's doing. Look, this is ebbs and flows of a young player, and when it comes to Pete Crow-Armstrong, obviously I didn't expect for him to have this kind of season and take off like this. I always figured he'd be like a 25, 40 guy, not a, 35, 45, 50 guy, which is his pace right now. And it's kind of bonkers, but, still it's a guy that I have confidence in, a guy that, last year in 2024 struggled, was sent down, came back up and adjusted, and was able to adjust to the adjustments that the league made to him. And Pete Crow-Armstrong was able to then kind of get past the deficiencies and deficits that he was experiencing earlier in his career. And now we're seeing those fruits of his labor come to fruition in season 2. And, I look at it and I go, okay, now how do I handle him in this slump? Well, I'm not even worried, in all honesty. I think that he's done it for 3/4 of a season to where he's having a slump. All players do it. All players have bad months, from the greats like Bryce Harper down to the Pete Crow-Armstrongs. These guys are allowed to have bad months, and this is just it. I think he'll be coming out of it any day now. I mean, it only takes a little bit of groove and a little bit of what's the Austin Powers reference? Mojo. Maybe he lost his mojo, baby, but ultimately Pete Crow-Armstrong gets his mojo back and things are going to be great. And I don't think he has to go, back in time to go get it back. So Pete Crow is going to be just fine. I think that, if you're on the bubble of tilt, don't just be confident. Maybe not start him until he starts showing off. But I mean, hey, sometimes you might not have that option. I'm still rolling him out there and just waiting for it to click unless I have better options. But let's move on. Let's talk about James Wood, another guy that's been slumping, but I think has been, trending in a better direction. And, he's another one that, like, yeah, he had a rough couple weeks, but now I think has gone back on track. I'm pulling his stuff up right now. So, you know, he was batting 245 over the last 2 weeks. And last week was really putrid. It was really ugly. Most of his stats are coming through this week. Literally only had 2 runs, and I think he was batting under 200 the previous week. Whereas this week, he's definitely reclaimed it a little bit. 6 runs, a bomb, 7 ribs, a stolen base, batting 343, 344. Looking like a stud again. Like, hey, these young players are going to go through it. I think James Wood has has earned the right to have that kind of season where had that kind of couple weeks where he can, have a little bit of slump, and still not care. The only reason even on this episode, and truthfully, like I could already hear the hate mail coming through in the comment section. Well, why am I even talking about him? Well, the thing is, there is some players out there that are questioning what is James Wood's second half output going to look like. And this is a conversation I think I just need to quell the the hyperbolicness of the overreaction to like a couple bad weeks with a young player or any player at this matter. Like, you're starting to hone in on the playoffs and you don't want to see your best player starting to teeter off. So yeah, it's definitely worth a conversation. I think that I have no fear coming up with James Wood. And I think that, if he had a 2 week slump, I'm not even considering even, worrying about him either. Yeah, this is a, you know, must drop episode, but this is more of a hey, do I need to even start considering it? And absolutely not. Like James Wood's underlying stats are like elite. Xwolba at 371, expected batting average of 267, expected slug at 511, average exit velocity is 93.4 miles an hour. He's barreling 16.7% of the time, creating hard contact 54.3% of the time. He's not really chasing it. He's striking out and whiffing a little bit, but whatever. But he's also following that up with walking. Dude is just looking like an absolute stud out there, exactly who I thought he was going to be. I'm super happy to see the breakout, and I think there's only more to come. And I'm there's a world where I think he finishes with 35 home runs and 23 stolen bases and manages to hit 267 on the season. I think that might be his final line, and then be a top 10 pick next year, without a doubt, if not top 5. So, because I think there's a whole nother level that I think is coming next year. So James Wood, don't worry about him. Just keep it moving. Not a guy I'm really worried about at this point. So, is what it is. Just somebody that I feel we needed to talk about just to quell the fears. But let's move on. So about Wyatt Langford, outfielder for the Texas Rangers. Now he has had a disappointing season for what his draft price was to what the expectation is. Now has kind of we're getting to a different spot, and this is a different conversation. So ownership has dropped. He's gone from 99% owned to 89%, down a whole 10%. Um, and I think we're going to start seeing even more of it. I mean, he's batting 229 on the month through 83 at bats, and over the last two weeks, batting 237. And it's just ugly. He hasn't really lived up to any expectations. He's batting 239 on the season, 16 home runs. The Rangers really haven't picked up as much as I thought they would be. It's kind of crazy the fall off, especially after winning a World Series. And you look at Wyatt Langford, and there's nothing that's really just impressing me out there. And the average exit velocity is strong, the amount of times he's barreling and hard contact, but the expecting batting average is right on par, unfortunately. The ex-Woba says there's positive direction, but he keeps whiffing and striking out. And you know what? Until he kind of gets things to click, I don't feel great about him. I really don't. This young man is just not doing what we expected. That spring training was really just a tease. Um, I think one day he'll hit. I mean, he's only 23 years old. We're not even in the best time of his life yet in his peak years where, these are where you're going to see best performance. So no, I haven't given up, but I think that we maybe in 2026 have to readjust our expectations of Wyatt Langford, and maybe the price comes down where he's more of where more of this kind of outcome is built into his price. Whereas unfortunately for this year, you're kind of stuck with him. In deeper leagues, there's probably not a better option out there, so you're going to have to just play him, or at least hold him. In shallow leagues, you can consider it if there is a better option out there. In standard size leagues from 10 to 12, it's a discussion. Definitely not in 12 and 10. It's a discussion. If there is a better option out there, um, you know, you can if you really feel strong. I'm holding them to see if there's any kind of glimpse of hope. And the way he ended last year, maybe he'll just and end it that way again. We'll see. Ultimately, we're just you kind of have to hold, unfortunately. So it is what it is. Coming up next, I got more names that I think are a little bit more relevant to the drop show. What are we doing, Lawrence Butler of the Athletics? How are we handling the Brendan Donovans and such? All coming up next. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings bold grape ginger and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energized shot. Whether you're sinking a birdie or just making memories with friends, the ones in the hole in one for energy game. Let's be honest, some days, of course, or off it, you just need an extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. Of course, the great grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best part of the clubhouse go to without chasing down the bev cart. If you head to 5 Hour Energy today, 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code locked on golf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through until September 30th and on orders on orders, and it cannot be mixed with other promotions. The code is not good for subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get energized boost and you need to power through. Order transfusion flavors, 5 Hour Energy today. Okay. So, if you want a little bit more than what we offer in this 30-minute podcast, you're going to want to check it out. Check out our insider track. Look, we're going to give you prospect notifications of guys that are actually relevant, and you want to be first to the waiver wire to get them. September call-ups are literally like a week and a half away when these prospects that can be a difference maker to help you win your league are the ones that are going to get called up. The Bubba Chandlers, the other high-end prospects that we've been waiting on that you may or may not be still sitting out there on your waiver wire. You might want to get to them first. And that's all coming up on the insider track. Plus, you'll be able to ask us questions, get highlights and priorities and things like that. You're not going to get in this 30-minute podcast. So check us out. All right. Links in the description below. Let's get back into it. Let's start talking more players. And like I mentioned, Lawrence Butler of the Oakland Athletics. Honestly, he has had one of the most disappointing seasons, period. I had some high hopes for this kid, in all honesty. He had a way, 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 way better season last year. Now, there is sophomore slumps. I mean, it is a saying for a reason, and maybe he'll bounce back. But I mean, it's rough that we haven't even seen a little bit of spark. In all honesty, I mean, yeah, the counting stats aren't atrocious: 66 runs, 16 bombs, 47 ribs, 17 stolen bases. The 233 is really fugly, and the OPS isn't bad at 717, but it could be better. It's just it's rough. I look at for what we paid the price for him and versus his output, I feel like was not good. And him hitting 147 over the last month and 214 over the last 2 weeks is kind of just getting on the rougher side. Ownership is dropping like crazy. And I honestly wouldn't blame you if you flat out drop him. Like if there's a better option and the guy is performing over him, I'm going to go ahead and drop him. I don't have any kind of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Spit it out. I don't have any kind of have any like hope or attachment to him at this point. Yeah, does that upside kind of always linger? Yeah, absolutely. But you know, what's the likelihood of it happening at this point? 70-30, and 30 is being the low side, being pretty, I think, ambitious. But you never know. It's baseball still, and think guys could still get hot. But Lawrence Butler, if you're not in a deep league, you could drop. I would say you could drop 10-man, 8-man, shoot, even a 12-man if you have better options and you have your outfield and it's doing just fine and you need to pick up another positional player or a pitcher and he's just, your dead weight. Go ahead and do it. Anything higher? No, you got to hold on to him. Unfortunately, you're not going to find a better talent or somebody with higher ceiling out there. So, it is what it is. But, like I said, 12 and under, you could probably start considering it. let's move on. Let's talk about Brendan Donovan. I already feel the hate coming from the fans here. But Brendan Donovan, the second, third, short, and outfield player for the St. Louis Cardinals is has been bad. And honestly, I've never been a fan. And, if you've been watching the show for a couple years, you know why. He's never consistent and he never really lives up to the hype or the expectation that everybody seems to put on him, which I just don't see. Batting 231 over the last week, batting 206 over the last 2 weeks, and over the last month, batting 203. Even on the season, 57 runs, 9 bombs, 45 ribs, 3 stolen bases, batting 279. Now the batting average isn't bad, but the other stats are just mediocre at best, and he's not even like a stolen base specialist at this point to really help make you feel good about this. Brandon Donovan, outside of the flexibility, I think is a flat out drop. In deeper leagues, you kind of got to hold on to him because, especially since he has that flexibility, he could definitely fit into like in those, especially those NFBC leagues where you have your corner and middle infielders, and your UTs where he can kind of slot in and fill your holes on the days that you don't have players. Like that part, yeah, you kind of got to stick around. But like even then, if I have a better option, I have no heartfelt things where I'm going to hang on to Brendan Donovan. I think that you're totally okay to drop him. So go ahead and do that. I won't be surprised if he's under 60% owned by the end of the next week. So for me, he's a flat out drop. Let's move on. His name's a little bit harder for me to talk about. And that's Max Fried of the New York Yankees, starting pitcher. Max Fried obviously has been a stud most of the season. You know, he has a sub 3 ERA on the season, but has posted a 5.73 ERA over the last month, 7.20 over the last 2 weeks, and 7.20 over the last week. It just hasn't been pretty, but I mean, pitchers go through this. Max Fried is a phenomenal pitcher, doing amazing things. He's under a K per inning, which has always been his MO. He hasn't been a K per inning in a very long time, if at all. But the ERA and things like that, you can definitely count on. He has 14 quality starts and a WHIP of 110 on the season. I think that all of this stuff is still sustainable, and I feel like okay, a couple bad games are not going to scare me off. He played Houston, Texas, and Toronto, and Chicago, and the Mets that are ones that hit him around, and Toronto again. But I feel like okay, a little bit down performance, whatever. These pitchers go through it. And it's funny, they sometimes will go like, well, I don't even know why I'm pitching bad. I can't tell you. And then they kind of work it over and then somehow it magically clicks again. A pitcher like Max Fried that's been doing it for a long time, I'm not going to have worries about. If the only thing that might change on whether he's like an automatic start or not is the part of where you kind of have to manage Max Fried's matchups essentially, like right, like okay, it's a 2 start week and it's a daily league. you know, I might not start him on the bad matchup that week, but start him on the good matchup. If I have to decide and it's a week lineup setting for a week, then and it's a really tough matchup and a really good matchup, you have to, pretty much either decide whether you're going to take that risk or just maybe not start him that week. And that's kind of the decision now. He's not a drop, but he's he's a guy that you can say, okay, maybe I bench him. Maybe he's not worth rolling out there because he can mess up my whole week, especially in like points leagues, for instance. A really bad game from a pitcher, and you know, you start dealing with stuff where your ERA, where your points are just negative for the contribution, and he wipes out both starts with that one bad start, and therefore one of your better players or a player in general isn't producing, especially pitching in most points leagues. It's weighed higher in terms of points calculations, and what actually wins you leagues. So therefore, you want to maybe just manage the starts. If he has really good matchups, roll him out there. If he doesn't, maybe not roll him out there, and that's until he starts figuring things out. And then I think eventually he'll go back to an everyday pitcher. I hope by September. You never know. All right, coming up next, Josh Hader hitting the IL, and do you think he's going to pitch for the rest of the year? Is he worth clogging up an IL spot and hanging on to? That coming up next. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and God, it is. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I first started, using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I spend on food delivery. I would like to say I budget smarter, but no, I'm just more aware of it. Um, and I just realized, how irresponsible I am. But things haven't changed, but at least I know. But the part that I like, honestly, is the part where I'm managing my money with my wife. It gives us both an outlook of, hey, this is our finances, this is what we spent, and no, you can't order that, umpteenth thing for the kids off Amazon because you did 16 orders yesterday on Amazon. So we're not getting number 17 and we're poor. So that's the part that I like the most. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code locked on MLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code locked on MLB for half off your first year. All right, let's get back into it. Let's finish this out. So, like I mentioned before the break, Josh Hader goes down to an injury, shoulder issue. Hader's been diagnosed with a left shoulder capsule sprain and will not throw for approximately 3 weeks. After 3 weeks of not throwing, the next steps will be determined for Hader's recovery. Hader has received multiple medical opinions on his injured shoulder, and this is the current course of action. A return towards the end of the season, a regular season seems likely best case scenario right now. Um, Brian Abreu is a pickup. Yes, he is. I've added him everywhere. So yes, he's the next man up. But in terms of what to do with Josh Hader, well, the thing is, it depends. Um, so if you have a lot of guys on the IL and you're stuck and like right now you're hanging on because you need Hader, obviously, but you don't know when he's going to come back and you're taking up pretty much a roster spot because you can't move him onto the IL because it's clogged or vice versa. You can't put somebody else on there that will be back this season where there's just questions surrounding whether Josh Hader will be back. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And quite honestly, how I'm handling it is if I have the availability to do so, I will. But if I'm stuck in this rock in a hard place, which I know a lot of people are, I probably will drop him if I know that somebody's going to come back in the next couple weeks versus just taking it up. I need to win. Like I need to make the playoffs or I need to sustain the seed that I am. So I either have the buy or not. And you can't afford to lose out on that because you're just rostering guys that aren't going to play and possibly him not play at all. Like, for instance, it was really tough. Like I dropped Batista before the news and obviously that panned out. I held Shane McClanahan all year for him to just tell me, yeah, I'm not pitching this year. You don't want to go to that into like the first week of the playoffs, for instance, and your roster spot is clogged up. 3 weeks, 3 weeks is, into week one of the playoffs. So you don't want to be a part of that. I honestly, if you want to hold on for another week, maybe two, sure. If you're in a position to do so, if you're not, yeah, he's a drop. I hate to say it, but he is. Um, and unfortunately, you're gonna get mad, but somebody else is probably gonna pick him up, and that's their problem, not yours. Because the best thing that could possibly happen is they do the same thing because they're trying to get that, and they put themselves in. Then he turns out he doesn't pitch for the rest of the year, and that's the key part. Or maybe he just doesn't return. Until if they're even in a playoffs position, I don't know offhand, but that's what they save him for. And that's the part that you just got to kind of just chalk one up to the team and just be like, all right, whatever, drop him like he's hot at that point. Rather be on somebody else's team than me hold him and not being able to win matchups. So yeah, for me, Hader is a drop and I don't care what kind of league I'm in, but let's move on. Let's talk about Spencer Schwallenbach, the starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, who has been out for, quite some time. He obviously went down to injury and it's just not fun. He's missed a lot of the season, and Schwallenbach has, quite honestly, there's no news as to when he's returning and if it is going to be this season. And, it's the same kind of thing that I'm speaking with Hader. Like, what do you do? Like, this is tough. Like, what if you held Spencer Schwallenbach all this time and then he doesn't come back? And now you're just screwed. Like, straight up. Like, okay, you held this guy. You could have picked up other people, you know? Um, what like now you've lost matchups and either you have a lower seed or you missed out on the playoffs. And man, either solution is bad. Like I wouldn't want to lose my bye or the easier matchup for this for holding him. And right now, the latest news, which I got on RotoWire, which I actually had to look up for, Return this season is looking unlikely. So, you know what? Drop him. Like, flat out drop him. I was saying that anyway. He's the same thing as Hader, but, with that news, I drop him. Because you know what? Think about it. Braves don't look hot. Don't think there's any playoff aspirations. So why would they rush him back? He's not like Sale, who I think is probably pretty much like a week away. One more rehab start last I heard, whereas Spencer Schwallenbach has been out for quite some time, and he's a young star pitcher that they're going to want to preserve. So they're not going to, be dangerous. So Spencer Schwallenbach is a flat out drop at this point. If he comes back, if you start seeing positive things, pick him back up. But I honestly don't even think he'll be picked up at this point. But let's move on. Spencer Strider, same team, Atlanta Braves starting pitcher, and Strider is Strider's been rough. I mean, he had a nice little start to the season, and then when returning back from injury, but honestly, this last month has been pretty ugly. A 6.57 ERA, 13.50 over the last 2 weeks, 18 ERA over the last start. And it's just been so up and down and inconsistent in a lot of ways, and it's frustrating. And things that are positive for him, he's well over a K per inning. When he's brilliant, he's brilliant. But, can't start him in tough matchups, and some he's even getting blown up in easy matchups. And it's just too inconsistent. But the thing is, you have to hold. Straight up. At any moment, Spencer Strider can click. What is the thing that Dom and I always preach when it comes back from TJ? Control is the last thing to come back, and that's part of the problem. But his velo is just fine. His stuff is looking good. It's just his placement is looking mighty, mighty bad. His control is ugly. And yeah, his stuff is looking a little flat, but I'm not really too concerned. The biggest issue is, I think, his control. And what I expect is things to start going in the right direction, hopefully. But either way, I'd rather hold him on my team and start him against cupcake matchups, or, hey, it's the end of the week. He's pitching on Saturday or Sunday. My ERA is blown up. I know I'm going to get 8 strikeouts. And that's kind of the key part, too, to help give you that edge in strikeout categories. And, in points leagues, it may be a different story, but in those roto leagues and head-to-head roto leagues, that is where he's going to be the valuable one. So Spencer Strider is a hold, unfortunately. It is what it is. I'm sorry. I can't give you permission to drop him. But let's move on. Let's talk about Seth Lugo. Seth Lugo is somebody that we need to talk about, playing for those Kansas City Royals. Obviously starting pitcher. He's been ugly over the last month. A 7.42 ERA, a 10.66 ERA with a 14.63 ERA over the last week. He's been shelled by the Nationals, by Minnesota, by Atlanta, Miami, but then has been good pretty much all the other starts ahead of that. So I think he's just going through a rough patch. He's still doing just fine. I think I'm going to hold and see where this journey takes us with Lugo. Underlying stats are, fugly, but I mean, they never been pretty, other than the difference between 2024 and 2025 is, his pitches had just a significant amount more movement, and that could be it. But if he could figure that out, then we're going to see just, what we hope for. I'm not dropping him now. We'll revisit his name in like 2 weeks, right before the playoffs start. And, maybe we make that decision then if it hasn't improved from then. But, Seth Lugo is somebody that if he figures it out too, he could be valuable in the playoffs. So I'm not trying to drop him either. But guys, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, do everything you can to share the show, because we truly love bringing it to you each and every day. So thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get your local analysis on a national scale. And find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube, YouTube or wherever you're listening and podcasting. Peace out, guys.